All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to be continuing on with our study on the prophecies about Ephraim that I've had us on. We're going to be going over Hosea here today. We read through the whole chapter yesterday on the road to Concord, but I'm going to hit on just several sections today and go into some areas that in a little more depth than I did there. Real quick, I don't know how many out there in the world are going to want to hear this, but for y'all, we finally have a chance now. We're going to be moving. We're going to be splitting what we've been doing online. The road to Concord is going to be nothing but history and politics and media and philosophy and all that for its scripturally based worldview. But we'll be doing that there. And after I talk to her, I'm probably going to do, at least for now, Monday every week, just a Monday show on the road to Concord. But we now have We Who Are Lost running up and running. So we're going to have the new Rumble channel on We Who Are Lost. We're going to have the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So those are the only three we're going to use. We're going to be doing Wednesdays and Fridays. And I'm going to talk to a brother of mine in St. Louis whose thing is he loves the church history. And I'm going to see if maybe he won't start doing some shows on the church history. And we're talking about like back to the apostles forward, the old church history, the first 200 or 300 years. And then also forward from that and see if he'll just do some classes on that. And I've asked Brother Rick if he might think about doing little shorts on very key Hebrew ideas and concepts connected to the vocabulary. And the idea there is for our brother in St. Louis and Rick to eventually form a library that we can store little video clips that might have links to some, printed material as well that help those who want to study more. But two little libraries on the church history and on the Hebrew language and Hebrew thinking. We are going to turn We Who Are Lost into a reference for those who are coming out of Babylon to help them find a place to go. And there might also be a small section in there, some of my critiques of what has been labeled the Hebrew roots movement. Y'all been with me for a while. I believe it is the product of prophecy, but I also believe it's committing a lot of the same mistakes that it was fleeing from in the visible church. So it went from the problems with the visible church straight into the arms of the rabbis and the Pharisees. So we're going to really ramp that site up and start using it for scriptural purposes. I'm not going to promote We Who Are Lost. Yahweh will handle that. I will promote the road to Concord, and hopefully that will eventually fund it so that we don't have to worry about keeping it on the air. So we'll be doing that here fairly soon, and that'll start happening for those who follow us. All right, just wanted to share that because our efforts there are loosely connected to our congregation and our work to help the body here. And I know a lot of folks that are audiences in our web show join us every day here for service and Sabbath study. All right, Hosea. Oh, man, if I can get my eyeballs to work for me today. Nothing's focusing, brothers and sisters, so please forgive me. Yeah, I'm just going to focus on certain sections of Hosea today. And if I can get my eyes to... Nothing's focusing today for some reason. I got the right eyeballs on. Okay. So Hosea is a prophet to the northern kingdom. We know this. And he's prophesying right about the time shortly before the northern kingdom is lost. And he continues to prophesy for some time after they've been scattered into the nations taken up by Assyria. But in chapter 1, verse 4, I didn't go over this too much because I didn't understand it yesterday when I was reading through the whole chapter. But verse 4, it says, "And Yahweh said to him, name him Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will punish the house of Jehu for the bloodshed of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel." So this tells us that the northern kingdom is going to be ended. But Jezreel. Jezreel comes up so much in the first part of Hosea, I knew it was important. At the time, all I knew is it meant, God will sow. And I know he's going to take the northern kingdom and he's going to sow them in the nations. So I see a relationship there. But I did not realize where Jezreel is and what else it's connected to. Jezreel, constructed of two Hebrew words meaning to sow and mighty or almighty. In other words, Yahweh, Elohim will sow, Almighty will sow. The city of Jezreel is situated in a valley near Esdraelon, an area between Mount Carmel and the sea of to the River Jordan. Jezreel is also called the Great Plain in the valley of Esdraelon. So it's a mountain and a valley. Does that recall? Anybody? Mountain and a valley. Is this ringing any bells for anybody? Does this light off any fireflies? A mountain and a valley at the same time?
Well, the Mount Sinai and the
yeah, but a mountain and a valley. This is fuzzy Hebrew thinking. It's not literally. It's it's between Mount Carmel and a valley of the plain there. But when I first was reading this mountain and the valley, a firefly went off in my head, and then I got to the very last section. The valley of Jezreel is also called the Valley of Megiddo. That was the firefly going off in my head.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I see where you were going.
So that's the Battle of Armageddon right there, folks. And as I'm starting to understand, yeah, mountain and a valley. One place thought of in two different ways. Exactly. If we think that that's just an accident, I think that's a mistake on our part. As I'm starting to learn to think, I call it think like a Hebrew, but what it really is I'm starting to learn how to think like an ancient Near East, Middle Easterner, what we would have called Southwest Asia, an Asian mindset. It's foreign to those of us who have been raised in the West. It's a foreign way of thinking. But they have no problem at all with mixing ideas and getting these fuzzy feelings. We think that that's muddled thinking in the West because we've inherited the Stoic Greek philosophers' thinking. And I keep bringing this up. I cannot harp on how important this is. It's the air we breathe that we always want to categorize everything and put them in neat little categories. The Hebrew mind doesn't do that. So if we bring up Jezreel, it's talking about the sun. It's talking about the place where it was at, but also it's going to connect you to the idea of Armageddon, or the Valley of Megiddo. Well, why? It's destruction. Well, what does I'm going to sow have anything to do with destruction? Well, the point is Yahweh's going to sow is also connected to why has he got to sow? He's destroying the northern kingdom. But it also is connected, and I was reading, it's also connected to the idea of restoration. So, because that's another one of the things that's in the explanation I found. The idea of Jezreel is connected to the idea of restoring somebody who's previously been destroyed or lost. Well, all of that is what Hosea is talking about. Yahweh is going to punish and destroy the northern kingdom, sow them into the nations, and then eventually restore them. So it's all right there in this concept of Jezreel. And it's in the concept of Megiddo and Harmageddo and the Battle of Armageddon. That's punishment and restoration. Yeah. So this is fuzzy Hebrew thinking. And the more we learn to at least be aware that it exists in our scriptures, the more we'll appreciate the nuance in what the prophets and the scribes are telling us. And the more you'll realize that the scoffers who will tell you, well, the Bible contradicts itself. No, it doesn't. You just don't know how to read it. You're reading it strictly as a non-believing Greek-minded individual. And yes, you're going to see what you think are contradictions if you read it that way. But when you start to learn to read it as a Torah-observant Hebrew from the ancient Near East, these ideas don't contradict at all. They complement. And that's part of what I'm learning. Also, real quick, I had pulled this out. We were talking earlier about House of Israel. I can't read with that. But this is in the homework for this show coming up next Wednesday, and it says, under the inspiration of Yahweh, Jacob elevated the sons of Joseph over his brothers, and the head of the tribe of Joseph was to be prince amongst his brothers. That's going to be Ephraim, in Genesis 49:22 through 26. Then Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, which branches climb over a wall. This is the verse that identifies Joseph. That's Joseph being put in the charge of Israel. But that branch that climbs over a wall, there's an allusion to that in Hosea and in Isaiah. Here's the verse that's going to connect us to Hosea. Isaiah 5:7. The vineyard of Yahweh Almighty is the house of Israel, northern kingdom, Joseph. And Joseph is led by Ephraim. And the men of Judah are the garden of his delight. Why is this important? I always read the vineyard of Yahweh. I'm thinking Israel, and I was always thinking Judea. No. It's the house of Israel, wherever they're planted. And I always think this is always the Holy Land. Not necessarily. It's where exactly the vine goes over the wall. It spreads outside of the Holy Land. Think like a Hebrew. That's in Genesis, and it's a foreshadow of what Hosea is going to tell us is about to happen. So he continues. We'll start in chapter 1, still verse 9. And Yahweh said, name him Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I am not your Elohim. So this Lo, I was asking Ray, and I've asked Rick about this. Lo means not. Being people, mine, not my people. Said, yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. Now that's going to be the house of not just Jacob, but it's also the house of Israel is what we're talking about here. And in the place where it is said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are the sons of the living Elohim. And the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will be gathered together, and they will appoint for themselves one leader, and they will go up from the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. There's that Jezreel again. Now, that can be simultaneously thought of, well, great will be the day of judgment, and great will be the day of restoration. It's sandwiched. First we have, in verse 4, Jezreel. Desolation, judgment. It says, you're going to be not my people. I'm going to scatter you. And then Jezreel again toward the end here, after we're told that they'll come together and appoint one leader. Great will be that's restoration. So there's that fuzzy thinking and that the Hebrew idea of the things being opposites sometimes. And remember, the yin and yang that we know about, that's an Asian idea. Okay? Here's that type of thinking right here. But in a place where it's said, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are sons of the living Elohim. I could be wrong. But in what I've been starting to study on this, I think this is we are living through the fulfillment of this prophecy. For the better part of 2 millennia, the Christian church has thought that it replaced Yahweh's people. And they think of that the Jews did away with it and we replaced it, never realizing that most Christians are grafted into the house of Israel. And a great number of the very first church, a lot of them were from the house of Judah, from Sister Judah. So they came back together. Okay, this is the start of Ezekiel 37, putting the 2 sticks back together with the new covenant. It's an ongoing process. But the idea of calling these lost tribes with the Gentiles grafted in the people of the living Elohim, I can't find any reference to that in the modern church or even the ancient church until in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. And by the mid 1800s, if you've read the Oracle, you know that leaders within the house of Judah and leaders within the house of Israel, the visible church, Protestant Catholic, with rabbis, were trying to get the 2 houses back together again. And we have seen fulfillments of prophecies here with return to the land. Israel's a nation once again. The Temple Mount is under control of Sister Judah. Judah has control of the Temple Mount. A lot of the things we're told to look for, we're seeing. But until we understand the house of Israel and the house of Judah are treated differently. When it says that the nations are going to come against Israel in the very end times, last days, we always think Middle East. We should be thinking just the Middle East. Wherever Israel is found, we're going to have the nations coming against them. Y'all been paying attention to what's been happening to the remnant of the believers in Europe? And then it moved to England, and now it's here on our doorsteps. And it's no coincidence that it's happening here at the same time we have a shooting war going on now in the Middle East between Sister Judah and Iran. Okay, Iran is also connected to Medo-Persia and to the idea of Babylon in that whole area.
In the United States, is considered the great Satan.
Right.
Israel is the little Satan.
Yes.
They're concerned.
Our enemy has identified us.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to hop over, let's see here. Chapter 2, and I'm just going to be cherry picking today because, like I told them on the show yesterday, y'all are farther along than most of my audience on the show is. But we did see something here in chapter 2, verse 7. She will pursue her lovers, but she will not overtake them, and she will seek them, but will not find them. Then she will say, I will go back to my first husband, for it was better for me than now. That's the prodigal son. It dawned on me when I was reading it yesterday. That's the prodigal son. It said, I went after my lovers, and what did the prodigal son say? Hey, Dad, give me my inheritance. Let me go out and party and live licentiously and chase after other Elohim and other God, live worldly. And how did that turn out for him? It didn't. Chase after them will not overtake them. That's a way of saying that the northern kingdom is going to pursue after the world, but they won't be able to catch up with them. There'll be nothing there. And they said, well, I'll go back to my first husband. Well, who's the first husband of the northern kingdom? Of Israel. Yahweh. For it was better for me than, so this is the same pattern of the prodigal son. Then I go to chapter 2 still, verse 14. This one I'm going to pick apart a little bit. Therefore, behold, I will allure her, bring her into the wilderness, and speak kindly to her. Wilderness is where? Anywhere outside of physical Israel. Yes. And why? What's connected to the idea of the wilderness? Beasts, animals, destruction, death. Death. There, and he's going to speak kindly to her in the wilderness. So this is Yahweh saying, I'm going to take the house of Israel, scatter her into the nations, into the Gentile world. And then I will give her vineyards from there. Okay, so if Israel is a beautiful plant planted in a vineyard with a spring and a wall, that's a prophetic description of a nation, of Israel. But he's going to take the house of Israel into the nations and give them vineyards from there. It's going to give them their own nations. Abraham was promised he would become many nations. In the prophecies over Ephraim, we're told he's going to be the fullness of the Gentiles, but we're told later, it's still in Genesis, that Joseph will become many nations, many goyim, a multitude of goyim. Well, Joseph, right here, that connects the concept. You won't see this if you're doing word study. The concept is right here. The vineyard, the vine that grows over the wall, Joseph's going to spread. Joseph's the northern kingdom. Joseph's going to be into the wilderness. He's going to be given many vineyards. And next week and the week after that, when we start tracing the archaeological history and the history of the crests and of the people groups and the migrations of the northern kingdom, guess what you're going to start finding? They founded many different nations. Now, when we went through history, we were reading, if you did any Western history, Western Civ, you're wondering, why are these these royal families always intermarrying? Well, I found something in the archaeological and historic records of Greece. All those families, the entire royal family of Europe, England included, can be traced to one tribe, primarily one tribe from the northern kingdom. Anybody know what tribe that is? Dan. And they now know this. They found this in Greek records. So I'll be showing that to you. But they took over the royal families of Greece, and when they lost the battles of Troy and everything, they moved to Rome, to Italy, and they took over Rome. From there, they went to Spain. They took over a good part of Spain. Then from there, they went to England. But they also come up through the Caucasus Mountains and into Central Europe, Eastern, and then into Central Europe and up into the Scandinavian countries known as Anglo-Saxons. Well, the Saxons, I found out doing etymology work, Saxon is a derivation of the word Isaac. So and then this is why Thomas Jefferson, when he was studying them, he said, hey, they got the same legal system that Moses established. So we're going to look at this. This is prophecy. This is what Brother Kenyon has been telling us. And he says, and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. Valley of Achor. I looked into that one. Achor means troubles, affliction, or taboo. What would be a Greek word for troubles or affliction? Thlipsis, which we translate as tribulation. So if the house of Israel is going to go through tribulation, that tribulation is the door of hope. In the New Testament, Yeshua tells us, if you follow me in this life, in this world, you're going to have tribulations. Well, why do we think that the tribulation is coming at end times after the rapture and Yeshua returns? That's even in Hosea, it tells us this is going to be an ongoing thing. The Valley of Achor. If you're doing word study, you won't see this. If you're doing concept study, you will. First Chronicles refers to Achan as the troubler of Israel, who broke faith in the matter of the devoted things. This is when Achan, the son of Zerah, was unfaithful in regard to the devoted things and did not wrath come on the whole community of Israel. He was not the only one who died for his sins. Joshua 22:19 through 20. This is when they took parts of the land that they were moving into, and they were told to destroy everything and not keep anything for themselves. And yet some of them kept some of the animals, and they were told not to set up an altar, and yet they did. So the Valley of Achor is also associated not with just trials and tribulations, it's associated with apostasy and disobedience, rebellion. And then he says, and she will sing there as in the days of her youth. So she's going to be given different nations. She's going to find tribulation will be the doorway to her hope, and she will sing there as in the days of her youth. The northern kingdom will eventually return back to Yahweh. Singing the song here in the prophetic language, the Song of Moses is the covenant of Moses. The new song is the new covenant. The song is going to be a restoration of fellowship with Yahweh. This is as in the days of her youth, and then there's the days when she came up from the land of Egypt. So there's that covenant. It will come about in that day, declares Yahweh, that you will call me Ishi, and I will no longer and will no longer call me Bali, master. You'll call me Ishi, wife. Is that wife or friend? Yeah. And no longer call me master. For I will remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, so that they will be mentioned their names no more. In that day I will also make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky and the creeping things of the ground, and I will abolish the bow, the sword, and war from the land, and will make them lie down in safety. I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in loving kindness and compassion, and I will betroth you to me in faithfulness. Then you will know that I am Yahweh, that you will know Yahweh. Betrothed, he'll be able to be remarried her. This has got to come after the cross, because until Yahweh dies, he can't remarry the northern kingdom. He's given her a divorce already. So he can't do that until after. So we know we're talking about into the future from the time Hosea is writing. Now it talks about a new covenant. But he says, you'll no longer call me, you'll call me, wife, no longer call me master.
Hold on a second.
Okay, how's that written in the Hebrew? Is it significantly different?
It's not wife, it's husband.
That's what I thought. Husband.
Yeah, it's husband.
Okay, that's important.
That's the masculine verb. That's what I.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for checking that. Husband. The concept would have still been the same.
Yeah.
Married.
Still, yeah.
John 15, starting in verse 12. This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that a person will lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you slaves, for the slave does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Yeshua is paraphrasing Hosea. But why does he say I've called you friends instead of calling you, wife? The Son is not the Father. If you understand the prophets, we say that the Messiah is going to be betrothed to his bride. Yes, I don't doubt that. But who is Messiah? It's the Father in some way, shape, or form. I don't get it, but he's the Father as well. And the prophets tell us that it was the Father married to his bride. And Yahweh is going to say that in Hosea, in other parts of Hosea. So Hosea is telling us that when the northern kingdom goes, it's eventually going to be restored. He'll tell us in other parts of Hosea that it'll come back to the land. But he's also telling us about the new covenant. He's telling us that all things are going to, that the northern kingdom is going to be seeded throughout the nations. Some of them are going to be given to them. I don't know if y'all see this, but this is an affirmation that I know we're in we have got to be in the kingdom. We have to be in the millennial kingdom. It's the only way some of this makes sense. Because if this is going to be a case when Yeshua has to come back and set up another millennial reign, well, if you've read the book of Revelation, he returns when everything is over with and there are no more nations. All the nations become the kingdom of Yahweh. He's totally, brother, it's in Revelations. He is totally.
I can show you.
We disagree. We disagree strongly because you can't rectify this passage any other way with anything. Because I swallow the scriptures whole. And you've promised to send me something to study. Yes, ma'am.
Comment from Aaron Spikes. I did a search for Ishi, and in Hebrew it means husband. So,
Right.
Second witness.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And in conjunction with that idea, of master and husband and friend and slave and stuff like that, this is all part of the process of crossing over or being born again.
Yes.
Because before you're born again or before you cross over, you're under the law.
Mhm.
You're subject to the law. Once you cross over, you enter that royal familial relationship where, if you mess up, dad's he may punish you. He's going to let you know you messed up, but you're not going to be ejected unless you're in full rebellion.
Yeah, unless you.
But as long as you're trying your best and you're trying to live according to his instructions, you're okay.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the law and
And when we properly understand
that's where that grace comes in.
Yes, and when you properly understand what you are explaining, that'll tell you why Paul says that the law is for those who are rebellious, so that it justifies their punishment. It doesn't apply to those who are family.
That's correct.
Well, it doesn't mean the law was done away.
No.
It means it has a different application, different purpose,
That's correct.
different use.
It's used different.
Because you're not going to be kicked out of the family.
Right.
But it does still say that even a believer can take stripes.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Then we'll go to, 22, still in chapter 2, 22. And the earth will respond to the grain, to the new wine, and to the oil, and they will respond to Jezreel, and I will sow her for myself in the land, and I will also have compassion on her who has not obtained compassion, and I will say to those who were not my people, you are my people, and they will say, you are my Elohim. So that's talking about restoration. In chapter 3 down to verse 4, for the sons of Israel will remain for many days without king or prince, and without sacrifice or sacred pillar, and without ephod or household idols. Afterward, the sons of Israel will return and seek Yahweh their Elohim, and David their king, and they will come trembling to Yahweh and to goodness in the last days. Now, again, I have come to understand last days as meaning that period between the ascension and the end times, but that's me. That's me. So what we're still talking about is new covenant period. As my understanding of this, restoration of the house in that area, what we would think of as the new covenant, it's best I can understand this passage. And then he's talking about a period where the house of Israel is going to have no king or prince.
And there's more to this too, because it goes on to say that there'll be no slaughtering without pillar and without the shoulder garment, which is the ephod.
Without established priesthood.
Or house idols. So this shows you that we are now under Melchizedek rather than under the Levitical code. So this destroys the idea of a third temple, in my opinion.
I would agree with you, especially since the New Testament says the third temple is the body of believers, which is further supported by the idea that each of us is given a stone with our own name on it, our own Shem. And each of us is we're a stone in the temple, a brick in the temple. That's how I understand that. Jump into chapter 4, verse 6. This is one of my favorite passages. It says, my people are destroyed.
There's no support.
What?
He was just asking about third temple.
The idea that the third temple is going to be rebuilt, I can tell you who started that and when they started it. And before him, it didn't exist. So for 1600 years, the church didn't have any history of that. And then it shows up under a man named Lacanza. And he was working to stop the Reformation. So we can get into that at another time, brother. We'll talk about it.
I was just trying to,
Yeah.
I couldn't hear him.
Verse 6 on chapter 4, verse 6. It says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And because you have rejected knowledge, I also will reject you from being my priests. Now, I've seen a lot, this passage gets quoted a lot, but just the first part of it. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and they stop. And he says, since you have forgotten the law of your Elohim, and it actually says Torah in the Hebrew, if I remember correctly, Torah of your Elohim, I will forget your children. So this is talking about in Hosea's day. But this is also going to apply because prophecies tend to be repetitive and they tend to be part of the nature of the person it's applied to, or the people or the tribes. They're being destroyed in their day because they've forgotten Torah. Ephraim's going to get destroyed again in the future because he forgets Torah again. Well, that's verse 5. I mean, chapter 5, verse 11. Ephraim is oppressed, crushed in judgment, because he is determined to follow man's command rather than Yahweh's. There was a couple of others in here. I know that in chapter 6, verse 2, Ephraim speaking, it says, he will revive us after 2 days, and he will raise us up on the third day, that we may live before him. So let us let us press on to know Yahweh. The notes in my scripture say that this says that the house of the house of Israel, Ephraim, thinks that their punishment's only going to be for a short time, 2 days, and then he'll bring us up on the third. All I see is the pattern, sign of Jonah here. And that's going to connect me again to New Covenant. And depending on how you're going to count days, that could also be 2,000 years before they're restored. Depending on how you count that. There's different ways to look at this. Where is it? There's another one in here. I can't remember where I found it. Remember when we were reading this yesterday, it mentions Gilgal a couple of times. And I can't remember where I saw that one in there. Somewhere in the middle of Ephraim, but it mentions Gilgal. And I wanted to look that up. And it's associated with a place of judgment. It was at Gilgal that Samuel rebuked Saul and prophesied over the loss of the kingdom. Saul had been instructed to stay at Gilgal and wait for Samuel before offering sacrifices to Yahweh there. Rather than obey, Saul took the matter into his own hands and sacrificed to Yahweh at Gilgal. When Samuel arrived, he announced judgment on Saul for his disobedience and stated that Saul's kingdom and position would not endure. So that's going to be in keeping with the prophecy over the northern kingdom and Ephraim. Again, because they refuse to listen, because they're disobedient, they're going to be dispersed into the nations. They're going to be destroyed.
Google is 9:15.
Okay. Yeah. Do not rejoice, O Israel, with exultation like nations, for you have played the harlot, forsaking your Elohim. You have loved harlots, earnings on every threshing floor. 9:15.
Yep.
Oh, and then oh heck, that's a good section. Okay, that's why. So let's start this one in 9:8. Ephraim was a watchman with my Elohim, a prophet. Yet the snare of the bird catcher is in all his ways, and there is only hostility in the house of his Elohim. So he was supposed to be a prophet and a watchman, but he ends up, if you read the history, he ends up just killing all of Yahweh's prophets who were warning them that they're breaking the law. Verse 9, they have gone deep into depravity as in the days of Gibeah. Okay, that's the first one, Gibeah. We'll get to Gilgal. Gibeah, the most prominent, there are several of them in Scripture, but the most prominent is the one that's in the central city that's called the Gibeah of Benjamin, hometown of Saul. So that's going to be connected to Saul again. And earlier in the book of Judges, Gibeah of Saul was the scene of that horrific rape and murder of the concubine, resulted in an intertribal war against the tribe of Benjamin. And if you'll remember that the concubine was offered to those people because during the night, those wicked men came and they wanted to have sexual relations with the Levite visitor. So that's going to connect you to the idea of sexual immorality, which is connected to the idea of harlotry. But then the two cities, this is interesting, though, Gibeah and then in a minute here, Gilgal, these are both connected to Saul as well, and the Benjamites. It says, verse 9, they have gone deep into depravity, as in the days of Gibeah. He will remember their iniquity, and he will punish their sins. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. This is coming out of Egypt. And I saw your forefathers as the earliest fruit on the fig tree in the first season, which that connects me to the idea of the fig tree that Yeshua curses. But they came to Baal Peor and devoted themselves to shame, and they became as detestable as that which they loved. Remember at Baal Peor, they go after the Baal of Peor, the god of Peor. As for Ephraim, their glory will fly away like a bird. No birth, no pregnancy, and no conception. Though they bring up their children, I will bereave them until not a man is left. Yet woe to them indeed when I depart from them. Ephraim, as I have seen, is planted in a pleasant meadow like Tyre. Now that, to me, that immediately connected me to the story of the Garden of Tyre with the story of what we think of as Satan, where he was, bejeweled and perfect in all his ways and everything, and he walked through the garden, but that's where the prophet is condemning the king of Tyre, but he parallels it with the story of the rebellion in paradise. So this could be a comparison that Ephraim has committed the same sins, and it's all due by pride, because Ephraim's sins are due to pride as well. But Ephraim will bring out his children for the slaughter. Give them, O Yahweh, what will you give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breasts. All their evil is at Gilgal. And indeed, I came to hate them there because the wickedness of their deeds. I will drive them out of my house. I will love them no more, and their princes are rebels. Ephraim is stricken. Their root is dried up, meaning their history, their time. They will bear no fruit, even though they bear children. I will slay the precious ones of their womb. My Elohim will cast them away because they have not listened to him, and they will be wanderer among the nations. Well, that's part of what's going to happen to them for many, many. And then where was the next section I wanted?
Is that what's happening right now?
Well, in part, but they've been wandering for a long time.
It's been a while, but you can see
There's one of the
it's
prophecies
happening
tells you to flee, and it says that you will not finish going through the cities of Israel before the Messiah returns. You can go through every city in the northern kingdom in a couple of weeks, even on foot. And you go through every city in the whole of the Holy Land in a month or two, even on foot. You can do some heavy, serious walking,
Depends on your definition of Holy Land.
Well,
If you're talking about what Yahweh gave,
I can still do it easily in a lifetime, even if all that.
Yeah.
But if we're understanding Israel correctly here, being spread throughout the nations, wherever he's at in his different vineyards, you ain't never getting through every one of those cities, not in one human lifetime. Not unless you're in a puddle hopper flying to each one of them. I mean, it would still take you your whole life. Because when you get done with one spot, you'd have to go back to the cities that have sprouted up since you left a couple of years ago. So depending on how we read it, chapter 11, I'm going to start in verse 7. So my people are bent on turning from me, though they call them to the one on high. They call to the one on high. None of them exalts him. In other words, if you understand what's happening in the northern kingdom, they've set up those two bulls, and they've set up their own priesthood, and they've set up their own feasts, and they're only using the first 5 books of Torah, and they've basically essentially committed the same thing that Aaron did in before Mount Sinai. Look, Israel, you're Elohim that brought you out of Egypt. They're going to worship Yahweh their way. So this is the same idea, the same things going on. How can I give you up, O Ephraim? How can I surrender you, O Israel, Ephraim and Israel? And how can I make you like Admah? And how can I treat you like Zeboim? My heart is turned over within me, and my compassion are kindled. Yesterday, I didn't know what those 2 cities were about. They were destroyed with Sodom and Gomorrah for the same crimes. So that now connects us back to that other city where the concubine is slayed for wanting to sexual immorality. Well, what does sexual immorality have to do with the destruction of the northern kingdom? Well, that's going to be connected to the idea of harlotry. Harlotry is apostasy. That's what Ephraim's being destroyed for, is apostasy. So it's painting these many different images, and it's doing it harshly. Said, I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not destroy Ephraim again, for I am Elohim and not man, the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come in wrath. They will walk after Yahweh and will roar like a lion. Indeed, he will roar, and his sons will come trembling from the west. If you're in Jerusalem and you look straight west, the capital of the Holy Lands, you're going to come through the Straits of Gibraltar and pretty much close to D.C. Also, if your enemies in the scriptures come from the south, from the north, and from the east, they very seldom come from the west. Why would they not come from the west in the ancient times? Because there's none but water there. When you look at the land, it says that they will come trembling like birds from Egypt, which is physical bondage, and like doves from the land of Assyria. And I will settle them in their houses, declares Yahweh. Ephraim surrounds me with lies, and the house of Israel with deceit. Judah is also unruly against the Elohim, even against the Holy One who is faithful. Then chapter 12, it says, Ephraim feeds on the wind and pursues the east wind continually. He multiplies lies and violence, and moreover, he makes a covenant with Assyria. He allies with physical nations, relying on them rather than Yahweh. Pursuing the east wind, I found out that's a Hebrew idiom for destruction or calamity, but also it means the east wind comes from the east and blows to the west. If you're chasing the east wind, it also means that you're heading west. What happens to Ephraim as he comes out of the Holy Lands? The northern kingdoms are constantly pushed west for the most part. Even the apostles, their evangelism heads that way as well. Going to chapter 13, I found a passage in here that struck me. It may not strike anybody else, but chapter 13, verse 4.
Well, Gilgal's mentioned again in 12:11.
Yes, I know that one. He's mentioned several times. Jezreel and all of these things are mentioned several times throughout Hosea. He's bringing up that idea of sexual depravity and harlotry, immorality with harlotry. So 13:4, yet I have been Yahweh your Elohim since the land of Egypt, and you have not known any other Elohim except me, or El, for there is no Savior besides me. I was taught that the only name that saves is that of Jesus, and that there's no Savior but Jesus. If you read the whole book of Hosea, Yahweh says this several times. He's the only Savior. So how's that work? Well, if we understand that Yeshua is in the Father and the Father in Yeshua, and we understand the concept of Shem, well, then they're one and the same. This is
not exactly the same.
Yeah, they are, but they aren't. But it's the same Shem. And in verse 5, it says, I cared for you in the wilderness, in the land of drought. As they had their pastures, they became satisfied, and being satisfied, their hearts became proud. So I told you, Ephraim's in trouble mostly for the crime of pride. Therefore, they forgot me. So I will be like a lion to them, like a leopard will lay in wait by the wayside. I will encounter them like a bear robbed of her cubs, and I will tear open their chests. There I will also devour them like a lioness, as a wild beast would tear them. So why would leopard, bear, lion, and beast ring in my ears? Daniel. In the destruction of, there's an attack by the leopard, bear, lion, beast on Yahweh's people again in Daniel. It ends with talking about how Yahweh's going to heal the northern kingdom's apostasy and take the name of the Baals out of their mouths. The book of Hosea. I was wondering, how many of y'all, did any of y'all read Hosea other than I know Deborah did? Did anybody else read? You kind of got forced to, and so did Caitlin, because y'all listened to me ramble through it yesterday. Did anybody else read it since last week? Mm-hmm. Did you find anything in there that was talking to you or catching your attention? Anything particular or specific?
Nothing really new. I just heard it a couple days before also.
Amos is also a prophet to the northern kingdom, and there's one more, I can't remember his name, but they're talking mostly to the northern kingdom. There's one passage in here, I can't find it right off, but we're told that Ephraim is scattered to the nations, but he's a cake unturned. And in that passage of Hosea, it's more than likely it's after the divorce and after the northern kingdom is thrown into the nations. Cake unturned is another way. It's a cultural idiom. If you have a cake, you put it on the oven, because they would cook their bread cakes, big flat like pita. They'd lay it on top of the oven. They didn't put it in it. They put it on the top. It would cook one side, and they'd flip it, cook the other side. So if you have a cake unturned, I've seen two interpretations. I've seen the interpretation, if you leave the cake and you don't turn it, it burns up. Okay, that would actually work for Hosea's day.
Incomplete.
Incomplete. It hasn't been turned. Exactly. So it has to be flipped. It could be a way of saying that Ephraim's story is not over.
I got pancake in my head when I read it.
Yes. Pancakes, same thing. Cake unturned. I've tended to reject the idea that it means it's burned up, because there's no other language like that in Hosea. That we're told that they're going to be exiled. We've got that. But throughout the book of Hosea, Yahweh continuously says, but I'm not going to leave you there. I'm not going to totally destroy you. I'm eventually going to restore the house of Israel. I think that his story is incomplete, is the way we're looking at that.
7 verse 8, if anybody cares.
Okay, chapter 7, verse 8 is where we find that. But that's why I see that one that way. The thing here, when we're studying prophecy, y'all been with me long enough now to know that I do not like to try and cut. I don't like to use it as a crystal ball and say, oh, this is what it has to be, or this is what it was. I don't get concrete with prophecy. What I like to use prophecy for, the Messiah tells us that we should be able to tell a season. Well, prophecy should be able to give us hope about the thing that these things are going to be restored. Yahweh's got it. Say, okay, well, this is why these things happened. In this case, it's really simple. Apostasy, harlotry, unfaithfulness driven by pride. Because there's a passage in here where Ephraim says that, he's made himself strong with his own wealth and his own military might. So that's the boasting of Ephraim. He does that a lot. So wherever we find a nation that nominally prays to Yahweh and his son, whether they do it correctly or not, that's the echo of Ephraim. That Ephraim still thinks they're, generally praying to Yahweh, even though Yahweh says in Hosea, says, I'm not listening to this. It's not not the way I told you to do it. It's not going to help you. It's not going to save you. So wherever you find a nation now or throughout history, that's going to fit the pattern. So if they claim to be Christian and they boast in their military might and in their financial wealth, that's the pattern of the northern kingdom of Ephraim. We're really bad about that one, because there's a one in Hosea. It's talking about made themselves rich and they haven't sinned. There's nothing for them to forgive, to be forgiven. They've done nothing unrighteous. It made me immediately think of Trump. He's always talking about, making money and power and being the strongest nation. And then he said that he's done nothing that he needs to, to repent for. He's never done anything wrong. I'm not singling Trump out per se. I'm saying that there's that boasting attitude. And yes, it's common to all humans. It's part of human nature. But when you're looking at a people group that have that habit, a people group of being rugged individualism, because that's how Hosea describes Ephraim, it's pride. Well, I can tell you that I'm not aware of any other nation that has boasted about its rugged individualism other than this one. There's always been a communal aspect of just about every other nation that I've ever studied. Like with England, you belong to the king. That's not communalism. Any place that's ever had a king, they have a communalism type of idea to them, not a rugged individualism, rather. But Ephraim's going to be without king. Well, Ephraim, if we're correct, has not been without king until this nation divorced the crown.
Daniel chapter 4 tells you that Trump is King Nebuchadnezzar. You studied all day long. It also tells you that in Jeremiah chapter 27 that this world belongs to Trump for the next 3.5 years. You need to study it. You can go also to Genesis chapter 37, 38, and 39. We'll skip 39, 38 because it's a different one. 39 and 40. And then Acts chapter 7 tells you all the same thing what you're saying. But it don't sit there and say, well, maybe no. It tells you.
It might talk about a pattern.
No, it's not a pattern.
Or a type.
No, it's not a type. It's not a type.
All right.
It's not a pattern.
If you're gonna read prophecy and say for sure this is it, you're gonna have me in opposition to you forever. Because remember, you were sure you weren't going to be here anymore.
Oh, I'm sure now. Let me ask you a question. When Adam and his wife sinned, did they die right then?
They died spiritually.
Spiritually,
Yes.
But did they die?
Physically, no.
We're under Matthew 24:22 right now. 303 days.
Brother, I love you, and I do, and I've told you I appreciate you being here, but you have to understand, I've got some skepticism about this. I had it before I met you. Doubly have it with you specifically because you were in this very room swearing to us you were about to be raptured. And I told you that day, I told you that you've been raptured?
I'm raptured still. There's a difference. You need to study the Bible.
That's not what you were telling us that day.
At that time, see, you said this 2 or 3 weeks
When
ago.
I talked to you
You
that
said
day,
this 2
I
weeks ago.
asked you to make sure you do us one favor. If you weren't raptured, don't go away and come back with your, I was wrong, and I missed something, and then restore your,
You're
don't do
100%
that.
right. You're 100% right. Okay? But you said this 2 weeks ago, and you're 100% right. See, God tells you to follow me. He don't tell you every step of the way till you get there. He
Yes,
says,
I know.
follow me. And I did that. We did exactly what he told us to do. He told us all to fast the first year. Have y'all fasted this year?
When did
Daniel
you tell us
chapter
to
7.
fast the whole year?
Did you fast this year? Daniel chapter 7, he told you to fast. John chapter 11, he told you to fast.
This
Did you
year?
do it? Yeah. Daniel chapter 7.
What passage tells me it's this year?
Well, you can go to Daniel chapter,
What's the verse?
Okay, you can go to Genesis
What's
37.
the verse?
I'm telling you.
No. I don't want you to give me, tell me. What does the verse say? I don't memorize chapter and verse, but I know the passages. If you tell me what the passages is saying, I'll know whether or
The
not.
first year, you're supposed to fast because we're supposed to go home.
All right. You're using prophecy in a way that I've never taught, and I never
Daniel
will.
Daniel 31, verse 10
Mhm.
says you're supposed to fast the 7th year. That was 2024, exactly when I fasted.
If you know what cycle the years are in, for sure,
Absolutely.
you know something that nobody else on this
Oh,
planet
there's a lot of
knows.
people know it. So for some reason, you're not seeing it. You don't want to listen. You don't want to sit down with me. So you're not seeing it. So you're missing all
I
this stuff.
asked you. I came in here today and told you I didn't get the documents you told me you were going to send me. I told you the reason I told you that is because I don't want you to think I've asked you to send it to me so I can study it. I haven't received it yet.
Mhm.
if you want me to spend a whole bunch of time to come in here and go through it with, I'm not going to do that. I want to see what you got so I can study it independently on my own. Then I'll come up with it. Then I'll talk to you about it. But I like to look at these things on my own. And you told me the last time we were here that you knew I would.
I sent it.
And you said that's one of the reasons you'll send it is because you know I will study.
I sent it to you.
But I don't.
Hosea 6:4. We just got finished talking about. It says in 2 days he's going to rise us up. Jesus died on the cross 31 AD. 2 days later is 2031. Minus 7 years, 2024. Is rapture sealed year? We're raptured this year.
Okay, 31 AD. What day did the Messiah die on?
Wednesday.
Then it wasn't 31 AD, brother.
Oh, absolutely it was. Okay.
It had to be 27 or 34 AD. Have you not run
34, you're right. It could be 34. But
You didn't say it could be. You said 31.
As far it falls on a Wednesday, 34 does fall on a Wednesday. You're absolutely
But
right.
you told me 31 beyond a doubt just now.
Oh, 100%. The Bible is clear on it. Don't look at the eclipse. It tells you the same thing. Are you telling me God's calendar, Genesis 1:14? Are you telling me that it's a lie? We can't change his calendar.
No, I will tell you flat out that we do not know what the calendar is. It has been intentionally veiled by Yahweh. I've studied this a lot, and it has been intentionally veiled. Now, we can tell, like Joe was saying, we can tell the season that we know, and you're talking about 31, 34. I'm not saying that those are wrong. Those are probably correct in that area of, between 30 and 36, 37, probably very likely in that area is what we're looking at. But I will never stand up there and say that, because we don't know, we cannot know, because it's operational security. Do you know what operational security is?
Why did the Jews get taken away from them? Because they supposed to know for 500 years.
Because that's
Jesus himself said, you should have known.
Oh, hold on. We got a question on the board?
A comment from Aaron Spikes.
Okay.
What chapter of Matthew did he say we were in? I thought I heard 22.
24 verse 22.
24 verse 22.
For the elect sake. It's one that says for the elect sake.
Okay. Next week, we're gonna pretty much be following off the book Lost Tribes Found, Israel Lost Tribes Found, in his follow-on books. But basically, we're gonna start seeing what evidence Yahweh's people, his hunters, have been finding when we try to track down the migration of the lost tribes. Archaeology is going to be a big help. The history of other different people groups is going to be a big help here. But in this case, I'm just going to bring you some things that I have found, and I'll share them with you. And it's going to pretty much support what Brother Kenyon has discovered and been teaching his whole ministry. This nation is the seat of the house of Israel and the seat of Ephraim in the modern times. And we're following the prophetic pattern of the destruction of the northern kingdom pretty much for the same exact reasons they were destroyed. And all I'm looking at is patterns. What it means, I have a couple ideas, I got guesses, and that's all they are. But this is what the Messiah told us, is this prophecy should teach us patterns, should teach us seasons, should give us hope, and should teach us lessons about why these things happened in the past. But the scriptures themselves even say that they're not meant for you to try and divine the future. And if you're using them that way, you're violating a commandment. Divination. Yahweh, to the best of my knowledge, nowhere in his prophetic word does he give us pinpoint times on anything. He gives you ballpark areas that can get you to a year. But I don't know of any prophecy that nails a specific day. And my personal opinion is I tend to agree with Brother Rick. It's operational. It's OPSEC, operational security. If he were to be that specific, then the enemy, who knows the scriptures better than we do, would be able to get into the way of Yahweh's plans and force Yahweh to do things differently.
Well,
Possibly.
that is Matthew 13 says they will never see it.
Okay, so then you're the only one saved in the whole group that I'm aware of then. Because you see things we don't see.
I did have some dreams. They told me where to look.
And I'm told to test your dreams and test your spirits and test the things you said. Yeah, you've tested them. You have what you gave me the first time I met you. Dude, I can take that thing apart all day long. It is flawed.
You say so. We'll find out here.
In this case, I know so. You're still here. Sorry, your words, brother, and I have witnesses in this room.
I'm here today.
Right.
Just be careful what you say now. Be careful.
I'm not worried about it. I know.
Be real careful.
That sword cuts both ways.
Well,
Be real careful.
So we'll go over the history of the dispersed tribes next week, and we'll show you why a lot of us believe we are in the modern time the seed of Ephraim, and that's not a good thing.
Everything you talk
That's
about
not a
today
good
is
thing.
the United States.
Hmm?
Everything you talk about today is the United States. Everything.
Seed of Ephraim. But I don't like to think of it as United States. I'm not going to play that man's game. It's Ephraim. It's Yahweh's people. He doesn't tell us, oh, well, in the such and such time, there's going to be the United States. That's not in the scripture.
Yes, he does.
But
Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7, he does. I'm trying to tell you that.
All right, you're right. Let me hold on before we quit. We'll do this. Bible Gateway, bookmarks Gateway. I'm going to look for America.
yeah, it doesn't exist. I can just tell you that.
Not in there. Not in there.
He didn't give.
Not in there.
You tell
Not
me
in
Acts, in Acts chapter 7. He
Doesn't
did not
say
give-
United States. Doesn't say America. It's not in there.
Okay. Where's the 400 years at? Land that he's never put his foot on. He's going to bring him out in 400 years.
Caitlin, we're done.
All right.
We'll see y'all next week.